right, let's dive into this one. Chariots of the Gods. This book, well, it kind of threw a wrench in the whole ancient civilizations thing, didn't it?
Yeah.
Saying like, hey, maybe aliens had something to do with it.
Yeah, it really shook things up, made people question the traditional stories we tell about our past.
Exactly. So today we're going to take a good look at what Erich von Däniken is saying, what evidence he's using, and, see if his theory holds any water.
What I find most intriguing about Chariots of the Gods is, well, it's how it just throws the doors wide open. It asks, what if we're totally wrong about how things went down back then? What if we weren't the only ones shaping things?
Right from the get-go, he lays out this argument about how likely it is that there's other life out there. When you really think about how vast the universe is.
It's hard to argue with that, right? I mean, with billions and billions of stars, so many planets, statistically, it seems almost impossible that Earth is the only place with life. Even if it's a tiny, tiny fraction of those planets, that's still
a lot of planets.
Exactly. A whole lot of possibilities.
And he doesn't just stop there. He even goes after the whole suitable conditions for life thing. Like he brings up those anaerobic bacteria right here on Earth that don't need oxygen to survive.
Yeah. Like, whoa, that opens up a whole new way of thinking about it, If life can exist without oxygen, what other things do we think are essential might be totally wrong?
He even mentions those experiments where scientists were able to grow bacteria and mites and get this simulated Jovian atmospheres. So, if life can exist in a place like Jupiter,
who knows what's possible out there? Really drives home how adaptable life can be, right? And maybe how there could be civilizations out there way older, way more advanced than us.
Which brings us to, I guess, his biggest idea. Ancient astronauts coming to Earth.
Yeah.
Sounds crazy at first, but the way he lays it out, it makes you think.
He paints this picture, right? Imagine a super advanced spaceship landing on a planet full of, primitive people.
Wow. Yeah. Can you imagine?
The awe, the confusion, maybe even terror, seeing technology so far beyond anything they could imagine. Beings with powers that seem like magic. They'd probably think they were looking at gods.
It would change their whole world, wouldn't it? How they see things, their beliefs, their culture. They'd start new religions, build monuments, tell stories about these beings coming from the sky.
And that's exactly what von Däniken points to, right? All these common themes in ancient myths and texts. Gods on Mount Olympus, Egyptian deities in fiery chariots.
Like they were trying to explain something they just couldn't quite grasp. And some of the evidence he brings up is pretty compelling. Like those Pyramids maps.
Those are incredible ancient maps that show coastlines and continents with, impossible accuracy for the time. I mean, they even show Antarctica, and it wasn't officially discovered for centuries after those maps were made.
And they were using spherical trigonometry, right? Pretty advanced stuff. Makes you wonder how they knew all that.
And get this, Pyramids himself said he got the information from older maps. So where did those come from? Who made them?
Then you have those Nazca lines in Peru. Huge images carved into the desert, and you can only see them from the air. How do they even do that, let alone why?
Yeah, some archaeologists say they're just Inca roads, but come on, the scale of them, the precision, those intricate animal shapes, lines that go for miles.
It's mind-blowing. When you see those images, you have to wonder, who made these and why? What possible purpose could they serve if you can't even see them from the ground?
Well, von Däniken thinks they could be landing strips for, wait for it, ancient aircraft. Now, I know that's a big claim, but when you see how those lines look from above...
It does make you think, right? Okay, so we've got mysterious maps and giant desert drawings. What else is he pointing to?
He goes on to say that all these unexplained things point to, a way higher level of technology in ancient times than we give them credit for. He starts talking about ancient cities and structures that, well, they kind of break the mold of what we thought we knew.
Yeah, let's hear about those. Some of them are seriously mind-boggling.
So he takes us to Tiahuanaco, way up in the Bolivian Andes. It's this ruined city. And the thing is, it's built with these massive stone blocks, some of them way over 100 tons. And they're cut and fit together so precisely.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how they did that back then with the tools they supposedly had.
Exactly. It's baffling. And it gets even weirder. There's this, the Great Idol at Tiahuanaco. It's covered in all these intricate astronomical symbols.
I've seen pictures. It's wild.
And some researchers think they might actually be recordings of, celestial events from 27,000 years ago.
Yeah, 27,000.
I know, right?
Right.
If that's true, where did they get that knowledge? How did they know all that? And then there's Sacsayhuaman in Peru, that Inca fortress with those massive walls made of, like, puzzle pieces of stone. But what really blew my mind was that 20,000-ton stone block they found nearby.
Yeah, I read about that. 20,000 tons. I mean, how do you even move something like that, let alone shape it?
No idea. And it looks like it was flipped, like, upside down by something.
It's like some giant I don't know.
It's crazy, right? And he even talks about these vitrified rocks at Sacsayhuaman. They look like they were melted by, like, intense heat, like maybe even atomic explosions.
Now, that's hard to explain with the usual ideas about ancient technology.
It definitely makes you wonder. Maybe von Däniken goes a little overboard with the alien stuff, but he is raising some really good questions. He's making us rethink what we thought we knew about the past.
He's definitely making us look at things differently. And speaking of looking at things in a new light, he then jumps into these ancient texts that seem to back up his theory. He talks about the Sumerian king list, that cuneiform text that lists all these rulers with lifespans that are just
thousands of years long.
Yeah, thousands of years. I mean, that just doesn't fit with what we know about human lifespans.
It's definitely a challenge to our understanding of things. He suggests maybe these guys were, like, super long-lived extraterrestrial, coming back to Earth every so often.
Interesting. And then he ties this whole long lifespan thing to another thing that was super common in ancient cultures, mummification.
Now that's a connection I hadn't thought about.
Me neither. But he says maybe this whole idea of bringing the dead back to life, of achieving immortality, maybe they got that from seeing these extraterrestrials preserving their own bodies.
It's a wild idea. But think about the Egyptians, all those elaborate mummification rituals. What if they were trying to copy something they saw these advanced beings doing?
Right. And he even goes so far as to say maybe some of the big figures from the past were, like, put into some kind of suspended animation by these extraterrestrials. That would explain those crazy long lifespans in those old texts.
Yeah, it's pretty speculative. But it does kind of tie a bunch of loose ends together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's funny because we're doing the same thing now with cryonics, trying to extend our lifespans. Like, we're still fascinated with this idea of living forever.
It's true. And von Däniken doesn't pretend he has all the answers. He's pretty upfront about the fact that he's speculating. But I like how he keeps saying, we got to be open-minded, question everything, look at things from different angles.
Absolutely. He's not saying believe everything I say. He's saying, hey, let's think outside the box. Let's explore the possibilities. Let's weigh the evidence for ourselves.
And he does point to some pretty convincing examples. Like, remember the machine from Antikythera? That ancient Greek thing they found in a shipwreck?
Oh, yeah. That turned out to be some kind of crazy astronomical calculator.
I know. So advanced for its time. It really makes you wonder what else they knew back then. Like, maybe we've been underestimating them all along.
For sure. And then there's that whole Edgar Cayce thing, the American psychic.
The sleeping prophet?
Yeah.
You'd go into a trance and give people medical diagnoses?
Yeah.
Like super accurate ones?
Mm-hmm.
And prescribed treatments?
It's wild. Makes you wonder what the human mind is really capable of. I mean, if he could tap into some kind of, hidden knowledge, what else is possible?
He describes Casey's brain like a network of supercomputers, each one holding all the knowledge of a certain field. And Case could just, access them all instantly, pull information from anywhere.
Wow. That's an amazing image. And it kind of fits with what von Däniken is saying, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we've lost touch with some of that knowledge, those abilities that were around in ancient times.
That's there's this whole other story that we're just starting to glimpse.
Definitely makes you wonder. There's got to be more to the story than what we know.
So where do we go from here? What other clues does von Däniken give us? He spends a lot of time talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories we have, right?
Yeah, it's like this epic poem from ancient Mesopotamia, full of these amazing stories, and, well, they kind of line up with some of the stuff von Däniken's been talking about.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, there's these flying machines, they call them Vaimanas, and descriptions of weapons that sound a lot like, weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And there's even a whole flood story, really similar to Noah's Ark.
Makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Maybe those stories weren't just made up. Maybe they were based on things people actually saw.
That's what von Däniken's getting at. He says, what if these ancient texts, the ones we call myths, what if they're actually distorted memories? Real events, but twisted over time.
So we're reading them all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool idea. What else does he pull from Gilgamesh?
Well, there's this one part where Enkidu, Gilgamesh's buddy, he describes the earth from way up high. as if he's seeing it from a plane or something.
Wow, that's pretty hard to explain if they didn't have some kind of flying experience, right?
Exactly. And von Däniken says, maybe if these ancient astronauts were really here, they left behind records of their trips hidden in these old stories.
Like secret messages from the past.
Exactly, waiting for us to figure them out.
And he doesn't just stop with Gilgamesh. He finds the same kind of stuff in ancient Indian texts, Egyptian, even the Bible.
Yeah, it's all over the place. All these different cultures with stories about gods coming down from the sky and fiery chariots with amazing technology and knowledge.
It's hard to ignore, isn't it? Like, what were they trying to tell us?
Yeah.
He also talks about how the historical timeline we all learned, it might be wrong. Like the pyramids. He doesn't buy the whole, oh, they were just tombs for pharaohs thing.
The way they're built, the precision, how they line up with the stars, the math, the astronomy, it's all way too advanced for what we think they knew back then.
It just doesn't add up. And remember that story about Herodotus, the Greek historian? He went to Egypt like way back in the day.
Yeah, in the 5th century BC.
And the priest there told him that their civilization was over 11,000 years old.
Way older than what we think, right?
Way older. And they said that during that time, gods had lived among them, but hadn't been seen for centuries.
Like they were hinting at something, some lost chapter of human history.
It's like he's finding all these little pieces of the puzzle that don't fit with the picture we thought we had. Like he's putting together a whole new history, one that's been hidden for, I don't know, thousands of years.
Yeah, he keeps saying how a lot of ancient cultures, they had this advanced knowledge, astronomy, math, engineering, and we've kind of lost it, forgotten it. So did they figure it all out on their own? Or did someone help them, someone more advanced?
Big questions. I don't know if we'll ever have the answers. But even if von Däniken's wrong about the ancient astronauts, he's definitely onto something. He's showing us that maybe, just maybe, we need to rethink everything we thought we knew about our past.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. It's not about believing everything von Däniken says. It's about being open to new ideas, questioning what we've been told. And who knows? Maybe the answers are out there, just waiting for us to find them.
Well said. Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive into Chariots of the Gods. It's a mind-blowing book, and whether you agree with von Däniken or not, it definitely makes you think. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.